Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ninth session of the Schoolyard Forest Design Lecture Series. My name is Lauren McKenna with Green Schoolyards America, and supporting me today are my colleagues Allison Torres and Sarah Matsumoto, along with some other staff. Our agenda today will include an introduction from Green Schoolyards, our guest presentations, followed by brief Q&A time. This series is a part of the National Schoolyard Forest System, whose goal is to increase tree canopy and shade students from extreme heat. So onto today's topic, we'll include some background and tips on selecting schoolyard materials to reduce impact on environmental and human health. Um, a little background about our organization. We seek to inspire and support systems change to transform asphalt-covered school grounds into living schoolyards that improve children's well-being, learning, and play while strengthening their community's ecological health and climate resilience. Um, Centering children's well-being is very important to us. We also believe that what is best for kids, more often than not, is also a good choice for the planet. I know this is not a new concept for this group. Us adults do need some reminding. So we're not making choices that are simply easiest for us or perpetuate status quo environments that negatively impact humans and the environment, or that are not truly equitable. This requires a change in mindset around what we think a school should be like, including how it's maintained and what materials we use. And this change does require time, effort, and patience. But ultimately, we believe, and the research shows that these changes have long-lasting benefits that far outweigh the initial costs. So we hope that information shared today does continue to inspire and encourage you. Um, we are about halfway through this lecture series, so I feel like it's a good opportunity to reshare some key points from previous lectures that relate to nature-based schoolyard materials, as well as some other resources. So before I introduce our speakers, I'll take a few minutes to do that. All right, so broadly, there are some things to keep in mind when selecting materials. We want materials that support natural systems in the planet, that are ecologically sound, that consider heat and thermal comfort, especially for children, durability and access where needed, permeability, and children's experience of that space, offering variety, play, a sense of place, textures, learning, etc. I'll give some examples of each. When choosing natural materials that have low ecological impact, offer regenerative, renewable materials when possible, such as wood, bamboo, stone, rock, gravel, sand, uh, earth, vegetation, of course, trees. We're not going to talk about plants as much today. Consider other materials that are easily recyclable, reusable, or compostable, like, and also what happens at the end of its life cycle. Consider locally sourced, which cuts down on transportation emissions costs and gives a sense of place when you're using local materials. Reused or reclaimed materials. We're going to hear more about that from our speakers today, like giving repurposed wood new life, or reclaimed concrete chunks made it into raised beds instead of it going to the landfill. All these materials tell a story that students can learn about. It'd be really cool if districts had designated yards for materials, where people can make wish lists and get materials they need for their school. You can also talk to your city yard or waste management agency if they have surplus materials, or free mulch. Um, get creative about how materials are cycled in your own community and build relationships. Um, Avoid using in schoolyards where possible asphalt, plastic grass, reflective paint, which can actually increase sun exposure, rubber, and unnecessary or extensive use of concrete, especially if you're creating structures intended to grow food. Definitely do not use plastic lumber with wood fiber, treated wood, anything painted with lead paint, recycled tires. Many of these materials have known carcinogens and toxic chemicals, which can contaminate food, in addition to not being easily recyclable or biodegradable, or use a lot of energy and resources to produce. Green Schoolyards America's founder, Sharon Dinks, has a wonderful book that includes many of these ideas, asphalt to ecosystems. We'll add a link to the book, but also a link to an excerpt that talks about creative use of wood in schoolyards. In our lecture from this series, lecture number 2, Schoolyard Design, Forest Design Process and Principles, our colleague, landscape architect Lisa Howard, shares many examples of natural schoolyard elements and how to implement them in the schoolyard. Regarding heat, as our founder often says, if you want to create a hotter schoolyard, use things like these: unshaded asphalt, plastic grass, rubber, reflective paint, all result in extremely hot surfaces and radiant temperatures, not to mention, like I said before, all the chemicals and toxins in them whose effects on children's we haven't fully grasped. There's definitely concern about exposure or even ingestion of rubber pieces, rubber mulch, and the rubber crumb that is present in plastic grass that are made from, often made from recycled tires. So there's a lot of ongoing research in this area. A few points from lecture number 6, reducing extreme heat and supporting thermal comfort. We did hear from researchers who explain the importance of shade over any surface to keep kids cool, comfortable, and safe. Kids have smaller bodies. It's harder for them to regulate their body temperature or sometimes know what they need to keep cool or ask for help. So heat exhaustion and stroke are real risks. Unshaded asphalt and rubber, that it's so common at schools and playgrounds, get so hot they can result in burns. Avoid reflective paint, and again, one of the best options is vegetated space with shade trees that cool surfaces and ambient temperature. Related to durability, access and permeability, there are many pathway and surface options. It's good to use a more durable material for high traffic areas and get creative with smaller, more exploratory pathways. Options include various kinds of mulch, gravel, engineered wood fiber, wood decking, boardwalks using pavers. You can use sand or gravel in between pavers to retain permeability. And note that imperfect, sinuous structure, sort of wiggly textured pathways are much more interesting to kids than plain, flat, and straight. So get creative. Another option in some areas is just beautiful forest floor. You can design a forest area where you allow the leaves and nature bits to remain on the ground to decompose, offer homes for insects, retain moisture in the soil. Through the seasons, the various colors and textures from those fallen leaves, cones, and twigs and flowers are learning and play opportunities for kids. It's important, of course, that anyone maintaining these areas know how to leave the leaves. For higher traffic areas, some durable materials are presented here. Note that an accessible surface that naturally degrades or shifts might become less accessible over time and will need some periodic upgrades. This is normal, but it's a consideration. It is okay to have some impervious pathways in mostly pervious areas. Concrete is okay to use mindfully, minimally, but certainly not excessively. It'll create a smooth path, but does not have a low carbon footprint and is not pervious. DG or decomposed granite also is a use mindfully surface. Don't use it unless it's in a highly varied schoolyard with lots of other play options. Otherwise, kids will dig in it like they do in sandboxes. There's also some concern about stabilizers that do reduce surface migration and erosion. There might be some chemicals or polymers in there. There's also concern about the sourcing of the granite. Where does it come from? So this is a topic that I know that our team is eager to learn more about, especially to help you all make clearer choices that benefit your kids and the planet. Regarding centering children's experiences, nature play recommendations, there's so many. Start by thinking about what kinds of soft natural materials can be hopped on, crawled through, under, and around, like these straw bales, wood obstacle courses, and this hollow log. Using natural materials instead of only traditional plastic, metal, and rubber playgrounds opens up the imagination. Plant bits, leaves, and flowers and such can be used for art and play and crafts and lessons. Old pots can be used for music or mud or sand kitchens. Kids might enjoy weaving twigs and grasses. These are just some ideas. There are 3 great resources from our colleagues on nature play. Our colleague Nancy Stranisty's book, Nature Play at Home. We also have a guide on nature play spaces in our online library, and this article about tips for creating leafy living willow structures with children. Lecture 3 from this series, Designing for Children's Health, Learning, and Play. Nancy Stransty shares many wonderful examples of nature play elements that spark joy and wonder in children. The other speakers cite research on how the design of a schoolyard impacts children's health and well-being. So be sure to check that lecture out if you haven't already. Highly recommend revisiting that. Um, and lastly, I just want to quickly share a list of ideas for some other schoolyard elements. Of course, this is not exclusive. Seating can often double as play elements. Consider logs, stumps, boulders, straw bales of various sizes with various spacing in between. Your district might even have some guidance and specifications for these kinds of items. If you're looking to build your own, you can use natural or repurposed materials. This bench is CMU brick, concrete bricks, and lumber. The desks were made by parent volunteers, and the picture on the bottom, the benches have handles, so they're movable, and they can double as storage. For shade, see what assets you already have, like existing trees and shade cast from buildings. If you need more shade, consider more trees. Consider thermal comfort and structures that allow for airflow, like lightweight sailcloths, pergolas, and trestles. And consider, of course, natural building materials if you need more permanent, like wood pavilions or structures like that. Here are some ideas for repurposed materials, mosaics, repurposed pavers, discarded concrete chunks, old wooden barrels for planters. Get creative. If you are interested in constructing things like berms, storage sheds, playhouses, seat walls, things like that, there's a lot of ideas for natural materials. Many of these methods are ancient and represent cultures from around the world, some of whom still use these methods today. So there's a lot of learning opportunities there as well. And finally, lastly, just to share 2 more resources, please check out our National Outdoor Learning Library, especially Chapter 2 and Chapter 7. Chapter 7 has some great resources on material options for seating, shelter, shade, and much more. And finally, please check out our most recent resource, the Schoolyard Forest System Library, especially the Design, Implementation, and Maintenance chapter, which includes many tips and an inspiring photo gallery. I know there's a lot of information, but we hope that inspires you, and we'll move on to our speakers who will share more tips on selecting materials, reducing waste, repurposing, composting, and more. We'll hear from a zero waste expert and learn from a program that employs this reuse mindset by repurposing trees for use in schoolyards. So to introduce our speakers, who we are so grateful to have here today, Stephanie Barger is the Director of Market Transformation and Development for True Zero Waste Certification. For True certification, she helped launch True, which is administered by the U.S. Green Building Council's Green Business Certification Program. She has also worked with many, many waste reduction organizations, programs, and campaigns in California cities, businesses, and schools. We'll share our speakers' bios in the chat as well, their extended bios. Sam Ullery is the school garden specialist at the DC office of the State Superintendent of Education in Washington, DC. He has 10 years of classroom teaching experience and has dedicated the last 13 to supporting school garden programs through providing technical support, conducting trainings, and providing resources to the 100 plus DC school gardens while connecting schools with local support organizations. Sam was also very involved with our organization during our national COVID-19 outdoor learning initiative and shared his expertise then, and we are happy to have him back. Sam Doan is an urban forester with the District Department of Transportation Urban Forestry Division also in Washington, D.C. And he helps care for parks, schools, and over 250,000 street trees. He has a specialty in tree preservation and supports Sam Ullery with the Urban Wood Reuse Program. So without further ado, welcome Stephanie, Sam, and Sam, thank you for being here. And I will pass it off to Stephanie.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. So TRUE stands for Total Resource Use and Efficiency. And our goal is for you to value all the resources. So not only the materials, but your financial resources, which is sometimes left out of material management programs. And most importantly, your human resources. And it's all about being efficient. So I'm going to talk a little bit about TRUE, but also our bigger programs. I just want to let you know that I am available for any and all questions, either regarding your schoolyard, your facility, or even your home on how to go to zero waste. I'm, of course, as Lauren said, part of the U.S. Green Building Council, and we have many different programs. I think most of you have probably LEED, which is our green building certification. I'm also going to be sharing some of our sustainable sites programs. But we basically everything for everybody. But what's most important is it's not about certification, but more about giving you the resources so that we can all have a sustainable built environment. Also, we have our Center for Green Schools. Hopefully, most of you have heard of it. We have a wonderful annual conference. It moves around the country. This year, it was in New Mexico. I saw somebody in New Mexico. We had a great time in Santa Fe and just really talking about everything sustainable for our schools and giving lots of resources. We do have a summit coming up in Austin, Texas, and then a Green Spec writing workshop in December in DC. We do have our TRUE Advisor Program. This is an online on demand. We do give a 50% off for anybody in the K through 12 sector. So we work on not only certifying your facilities, but because of the demand, we now certify large events. We're certifying stadiums, basketball games, football games, conferences, and you can use these same approaches for anything that's happening. I know a lot of times we're talking about more the elementary, but if we have people in high school, we can help you with zero wasting your games and events. We're also now have a construction site certification. So this is for the operations of constructing. And once again, even if you're not getting the certification, you can use these processes and tools as you're building out your schoolyard or your school. And then I just also like to point out, we need to build for disasters. Unfortunately, they're happening all over, and even, things leading up to it with heat waves and flooding and everything like that. So making sure that you're building that into your schoolyards, not only in the materials you're using, but preparing for that. And then we have tons of of resources. We have toolkits, webinars, YouTube channel, and this is not only for True, but all programs under U.S. Green Belt Council. So what is zero waste? So number one, I think it's very important to understand that if you want to focus on decarbonization and net zero goals, your waste is one of the fastest and easiest ways to reduce your impact. Landfills generate methane that's 72 times more potent than CO2. Plus, it's a great way, recycling and composting, a great way to reduce the impact. I live in California and we'll probably never get people out of their cars, but by recycling and composting, we can reduce that impact. Also, by pursuing True and many certifications, you meet and exceed many of your state, local, and even global zero waste goals in being a good partner. So I'm sure most of you have seen this with True. Although we want you to recycle and compost, we want you to focus on the upper R's. And this is where the money is saved and made. So Lauren talked about many of these examples about reuse, remanufacture. My favorite R is repair. So, as you're designing, how can the infrastructure be repaired easily? So when you're choosing your materials, and it's all about redesigning and reducing and reusing. So when you're designing, how can you reduce the amount of materials that are coming in and the packaging? The packaging is sometimes the most damaging, and looking at that. Also looking at the zero waste economy around you. Do you have composting? What are the fees for dumping or burning? We want to shift those subsidies. And so being involved in your local government, your state government, so it is easier to get to zero waste. And it's all about jobs. When we throw materials into landfill or we burn them, we're destroying not only the materials, but the jobs that go along with them. And the farther you go up the zero waste hierarchy, more jobs are created. I do want to point out these key components of zero waste. The first is producer responsibility. So when you're choosing your materials, talking to your suppliers and asking them what is their responsibility for their packaging, for their products. And then the precautionary principle. And this is that we do not make products that are going to cause harm. And we look into the future. And I think that's happened a lot in the plastic industry. So although we're still using plastic, we're taking out phthalates and a lot of the chemicals out of them, so they are at least a little bit more benign. This is an overview of the True rating system. What I'd like to note is that it's all about purchasing. So a lot of times people are very focused on what is in their dumpster, but it's much easier to get to zero waste if what you are purchasing is durable, repairable, reusable, made from recycled materials. And then really looking at that upstream management. And then so much of it is focused on leadership. And I know that that's what we all want, but getting leadership on board first will help your whole sustainability program. And then training. So it's not only for your zero waste or recycling coordinator, but getting everybody involved in the training program. And especially those, working hands-on is they know how to get to zero waste and what is wasteful practices. And also training your students and getting them very involved. And it's about partnerships. And I think especially for the schoolyards, it's working with reuse.org. They have training programs, they reuse facility probably near you. They have a huge network across the nation. So if you want to look for reusable materials, is to go there. We just have so many partners. EPA, I always encourage people to lean in and meet their local region EPA. There's tons of grants out there, especially right now. If you want to put an anaerobic digester, if you want funds for on-site composting. And then EPA has a big program in sustainable materials. So as Lauren and I were talking, what I'm presenting here is more, what is your decision tree, right? And I think sometimes we want to get perfection and we want to strive for perfection, but progress is more important. So, if you just have a trash bin and you can get a recycling bin, that's great. And then you can move to source separation of your cardboard, of your plastics, of your bottle and glass. So you can actually turn those into commodities and get paid for that. Also, if you can only do a small composting site, that's okay. So, really getting creative. And Lauren showed so many great examples of being creative. And then, as I talked about with the training, is making it a team sport and getting everybody involved, getting the teachers, getting facility operators, getting janitors, getting maintenance, getting your school board out, getting PTA involved. And then looking at the cost and availability. So, of course, free is great. And I think our next speakers are going to talk about that. And if you can get items donated or get reusable items, Goodwill and Salvation Army are also great resources for you. You want to look at the health and safety. So we talked about the precautionary principle and what is in the materials you're getting. Sometimes you're thinking, oh, instead of plastic, you want to get wood, but then what is the wood treated with? And what is the safety of that? But more importantly, looking at your materials and the packaging they're coming from and looking at that waste avoidance. So I am talking about some recycling. So if you can get source separated cardboard and start doing that and getting paid for it, you're not only making the money off of getting paid for that cardboard, but the waste avoidance of what that would have been in your trash can. And then looking at that efficiency and then training all for zero waste. So I encourage that you get your contractors and everybody that's going to work on your schoolyards, get them trained in zero waste. And this can mean instead of cutting off a foot of a 2x4, they measure it carefully and they're not wasting and they're measuring accurately. So that is part of zero waste and looking. And then ask the experts. There's so many experts in this field that you shouldn't have to recreate the wheel or spend a lot of time researching. And so lean on all of us. So just some zero waste strategies is, make sure that you're conducting a zero waste audit. And I know here we're talking more about natural playgrounds, but you need to have a trash can, you need to have a recycling bin, you need to have a compost bin. So really looking at what those materials are, and especially at high schools. High schoolers, I think, bring in a lot more of their own trash or materials and odd things. So, making sure that you're going through and really profiling all those different items that are coming in internally and externally. And then looking at how you can reduce the size and amount of packaging and then tracking those and then looking at leadership. So, this is a building, but this could also be your schoolyard. So waste audits are really what happens in the past, and you need to look at that, and especially for illegal dumping, but looking at where your bins are placed. So, if you were to imagine this as a schoolyard, you're going to have areas where they're having lunch, there are areas where they're having arts and crafts, play areas, maybe there's areas where you have outdoor conferences or meetings or outdoor education. And those might need different systems and different types of bins. And so looking at a waste audit, usually a waste audit, you're just looking at where the different items are and if they go in the recycling, composting, or trash. What True really does is, why do we have all this bottled water? Do we have all this cardboard? Why do we have all these balloons, parts of balloons, or styrofoam, chip bags? It's great for composting, but why do we have so much composting? So with True, you really want to look at the individual item. And if it's balloons, stop allowing balloons on your campus. If you have a lot of yard waste, like maybe do mowing that allows the lawn to be clipped into small pieces and be used as fertilizer instead of being hauled away. And then looking at the different vegetation so it doesn't require as much upkeep. And so this is a zero waste audit, or our zero waste goal is to eliminate all of these bins. And then being a leader. Zero waste is not easy, but it's very possible. And we lean in on all of our partners and all of our schools and to be the leader and create new markets and to get out to the community and educate them. And then it is about a cultural shift. So, this is what you want to focus on mainly, is shifting that culture. Um, and you can do that in your schoolyards and in your playgrounds through education. So this is Rochester School. It's our first K through 12 school in the world. It is LEED and True Platinum. They source separate all their recyclables, so they empower and provide additional staff to make sure that they have a place to reprocess all those recyclables. So it's not just about putting them in the recycling bin, but tracing them. What are they going to be made back into? And if you can purchase them back and use that. They only have reusable dishware on site, and they save thousands of dollars by doing that. And it gets rid of all the litter, right? Because you don't have all the plastic and everything in disposables. They have a very robust composting on site, not only for their cafeteria, but all the yard trimmings. They also have a school garden, and what's really fun, this is my associate Jill, when you're a special guest at the school, they provide you a tree to plant at the school. And then I just love their student leadership. And all their different classes are participating. The math classes participate, the art class, the science class, they all are engaging in sustainability. I will say we also have the Environmental Nature Center in preschool in Newport Beach. They receive platinum certification, and I will say what they have done, and that is an amazing outdoor learning experience. They actually have chickens there to help go through the compost and just become very innovative in making their campus zero waste. So here are a couple from site. This is Brent Elementary School. And what I love about this is just creating new learning opportunities that meet curriculum standards by using that outdoor space. And that it increased the student health, right? So the more we can get students outside and provide them with activities, they're children and they need a lot of activity space. This is the Woodland Discovery Playground. So this was more in the community and involving the community, but it engaged with learning, play. And then this is one of my favorites, is the Carter Playground. And this is happening across the nation. Tree People in LA did a lot of this with school grounds, and where they took where there was asphalt or even where there's playgrounds, and they made a water filtration system so that they could filter the water, capture water. Like in Southern California, we need to capture all the water we can, and using them as retaining basins. And then you can create a circular zero waste water system on site. And so those are just a couple of ideas. I would love to explore more with all of you on zero waste schoolyards and how we can help support you on that. So our slogan is, if you're not for zero waste, how much waste are you for? And if you would like to contact us, here is our contact information, and please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to share all of the resources and just support you on your journey to zero waste. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. So I will pass it off to Sam Doan and Sam Ullery.
Okay. This is Sam Doan. Sam Ullery is the garden coordinator for all of DC schools, and he's going to be helping me out with doing the slides here, which is just fantastic. So I'm an urban forester, and I work in the District Department of Transportation, and we take care of all the street trees all the park trees, all the school trees in the city. And that's more than 250,000 trees. So it's a pretty big program. And a few years ago, we had the idea of starting to recycle and reuse some of the material that inevitably has to come down every year. You know, we have big street trees, and they get old, and then they have to be cut down. And our contractors, you know, were hauling that stuff away out of the city at that point. So our director queried with a couple of us who had forestry backgrounds and had run heavy equipment and all kinds of things in previous lives, and said, could you guys run a sawmill? And we said, sure. And so we started on a journey of doing that. And Sam, if you could cycle to the next slide. But basically, we set about a goal of capturing some of the wood waste that was coming out of the city and milling the best trees, the things that were still solid, because after all, when we cut a tree down on the street, it's because it's dying or it's dead, and it's a lot of times there's decay and other things happening with it. So not everything is millable. But we wanted to make these things available to not commercially, but just for nonprofits, just for the schools, just for the parks, just for libraries and nonprofits in the city. And we wanted to keep the program nice and small with a discrete group of things that we would produce. Next slide. So we took our time and intentionally kept it small at the beginning, just so that we could learn slowly. We were working, you know, once or twice a month, and then it became 4 times a month. And now my partner is basically doing this full time, and he is working with the sawmill and producing things every day. And we have a pretty high demand. So we came up with a website tied to our general website, especially for the schools and for OSSI, which is the state superintendent's office that Sam Ullery works for. And in conjunction with them, we started to reach out to the schools and say, okay, we can produce some things that can be used to make outdoor classrooms and things like that. And the response was overwhelmingly positive and fantastic. So next slide. We put all this on our website just to let everybody know this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. And the teachers and garden designers, landscape architects, and administrators really responded well, and we started to produce lots of things and install in lots of schools all around the city. Sam, you can speak more to this because you're much more familiar, but I think there's 130 schools at least in the city. And
yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and we've done installs in over 70 at this point. It's a pretty broad-ranging program, and the response has been fantastic. The next slides talk about a school in particular that Sam has more familiarity with, and I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Sam. So I'm the school garden specialist at the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, but more importantly, I'm a parent, and my kids happen to go to this school called Mundo Verde Public Charter School. And I am excited to share my experience with sourcing wood waste from my child's school. So this school had a limited budget for playground equipment, and they were interested in getting some playground equipment specifically with natural materials. So this tree costs $0. It provides a sensory-rich, engaging place and to play and explore. In 2019, I reached out to DDOT to see if they could help with this project. I was a parent interested in seeing if we could get a street tree at the school. DDOT was able to share a map with a list and a list of trees that were scheduled for removal. And I went to each of these trees to see if it was the right size or shape for our playground. After 6 months and visiting about 10 trees, about 50 hours of total work, we found the right tree. This is a 6.5-ton willow oak from DC, and it was the perfect tree. So we coordinated with the tree company, and we were on site for the full day of cutting it down to ensure proper cuts and placement was made. We had a certified playground safety inspector inspect and approve, write a report for the tree. So this, I hope that, this experience will help you, like me sharing this, gauge if a project like this might be feasible for you at a school that you work with. It takes a lot of time, forward planning and patience, but in the end, it's worth it. This tree, as you can see from the photos from where it was living, growing, to the middle photo is when it was placed, the day it was placed, and then this photo on the right was from 2 weeks ago. So you can see that it gets better with age. It tells a story. You can see how the shoes from the kids have worn the top of the tree down, and it really adds some character. And it's a decaying thing that is changing over time. It's used for science class. It's used for instruction as well. So I encourage you to contact your local forestry department if this is something that you want to pursue. Also at the bottom, there's a link that I used, found it very helpful for, there's a guide called Fallen Trees as Climbing Structures. And it helped me answer questions that I had. So thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah. So, and Sam spoke to the fact that I guess something that we have in our system is all those trees, especially the street trees, but in the parks and schools as well. They're all in the GIS map that's updated constantly, and it's live. And so what we do in our program is we're able to see what trees are scheduled for removal. And then Sean, who is my counterpart, he can go through and say, okay, this tree is the right size, it's the right diameter, it's a cherry tree, or it's a white oak tree, or something that's desirable for us to use, and then he can check it out and figure out whether it's a hollow tree or a tree that just we would exclude. And then those trees that are of value, we can basically tag those, and our contractors, we wrote it into our contract, will haul those to our sawmill for us. And so it's taken us a while to get that into the system and get everything worked out. But it's fantastic because we're able to get products. And if Sam wants to go look for a tree like this, we can give him, here's the database. You can go to the map and he can pull it up and look. So we started out and we made benches. We cut stumps, provide wood chips, and the benches and stumps have progressed over time as far as what we produce. Sometimes, as far as the benches are concerned, these large squared off logs that look really cool. Landscape architects really like them. You'll see them, at SoFi Stadium and different places, and they work for many reasons as far as architecturally, zoning off spaces in these instances where they've taken a new school or a school that is getting redone, they put those logs in locations where it's a good place for seeding, and all the native plants that are going in the beds, behind, are protected from people, cutting through and walking in those spaces. And so they're doing a double job there. The stumps are much easier to install. We can get somebody to go by and drop those off and set them up in a circle or a semicircle or whatever in various places around the school property quite easily. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with operations like that. We've had to think about, especially in the city, ingress and egress, access, the size of the truck that we would have to bring in, or equipment that we might have to use on a school site to site things. Large logs are very difficult to put into place. In one of the pictures here, you can see, a large truck that has to come in and put that log in place, because once it's there, it's not going anywhere, or it's very difficult to move. And that is a consideration. And later on, I'll talk about what we've done as far as design to have more wiggle room and more efficiency. So next slide, please. So quickly, we started getting inundated with lots of calls, and we were putting in everything in Excel spreadsheets and trying to keep up with phone calls and different teachers and administrators that were all talking to each other, because teachers communicate, and we learned that very quickly. If you're giving away something free, everybody finds out about it pretty quickly. So we put onto our website forms and just information about a process, so that people could go on the site and they could fill out a form, and we pared down the number of things that we were doing, because initially each school was unique, and that we were doing different things for every school, producing something different for every school, and that was time consuming, and we were getting a real backlog of schools that weren't getting things because we were taking time to do something specific that some landscape architect wanted. And we're still able to do those things, but we needed to have a process flow that was much better for 80% of the schools that were out there. So next slide. So this is all on our website, and we'll share links to our website at the end of this. But basically, the teacher or administrator can go in and they can fill out this information, and this gets the ball rolling and really takes care of most of the questions, and it makes it just a lot more smooth. Next slide. And on our website, even we have ties to our GIS system. We do this for street trees. People can zoom in and they can figure out what every single tree is on their street, and when it was pruned, and what species it is. And we did this for all the schools, and they can see all the places that we have done installs and all the places that are on the waiting list, and people know that they're on the queue. and so this gets refreshed constantly, and you can see how many schools we've done, and how popular it is, and how many schools that we have waiting. So next slide. This is one of the things that we produced lots of. We thought they were cool. Teachers thought they were cool. This one has been squared off on all sides. We also did just regular logs that maybe just the top is cut off, and you just have a flat surface and it's rounded all around. And we did ones that were just squared on a couple sides and the other parts were round. Those are very popular because a lot of the teachers really appreciated the fact that you had that live edge, and you could, over time, you could see all the little beetles and bugs and the decay that would occur, and just it's a learning opportunity. And a white oak log sitting on the ground takes a while to decay. So depended on the school, and it depended on where it was going in the garden. And so we produced what was requested. But these, again, if it's a courtyard that's kind of on the inside of the school or up 3 flights of stairs in different places, this is really hard to get in. And we have a log arc, which is something that lifts up a log and 2 or 3 people can navigate it, but it's not easy. And so we quickly went back to the drawing board and looked for other ways to produce things. So next slide. So we started to make benches that were 3 to 5 inches thick, and these were easier to move into place. We could just have them in parts and then, anchor them together once they were in place at the various schools. These are movable, but they're heavy, and some schools really like these, especially if it's going to be somewhere where somebody could walk off with a bench, and they don't want that to happen. People are not likely to walk off with these benches, and kids can jump on them, sit on them, do all kinds of things, and they're not going to break them. That is for sure. And so this is still an option that we offer. Next. So another option, especially for those locations where we need lots of seating, or they want it to be movable, and they want to be able to set up an outdoor classroom and shift things around, or just have lots of flexibility. We can make 2 to 3 inch slabs and cut them to 6 foot length or 8 foot length or 12 foot length. And we have lots of big trees in the city, so these can be between 14 and 24 inches wide. They're pretty wide, and you put these stable bases on them, and you can see just how many benches we can produce out of a tree, and how many we can get onto a truck. That's a lot of benches in that truck, and that's a lot of schools that can get served. And so this has been something that we've moved towards. And the other great thing about it is we can drop these off with Sam or with whomever the garden coordinator is, or the PTA at a school. And here's your instructions on how to put these in place and drill them together. And when the PTA has a work day on a Saturday and they get together, and we're going to spread mulch, and we're going to do some spring cleanup in the garden, and we're going to put together some benches, they have all the materials that we've set aside for them, and they can do it themselves, a volunteer group. And there's a lot of satisfaction that comes out of that for those groups. And these benches really serve a purpose, and that's been fantastic. So there's lots of different ways to do things, and we have just learned over time, these are things we can do. These are things we can do to save our backs. Those really big benches, if you're not lifting properly, it's not a good thing. So these are a little bit more user friendly. So that's what we do for schoolyards. We also have worked with designers in the parks and schools for all kinds of things, like balance beams, and somebody built like a log cabin structure. We made lots of different things for schools and community gardens. Next slide. We make lots of building materials. There are high school programs that are involved with learning trades and doing construction work and things like that. And so we can provide lots of wood for them. They're not buying it from Home Depot, and they can get all kinds of things from, our softer wood material that can be 2x4s and 2x6s to really nice walnut and cherry that they can make, bookcases and things like that to take home that they're really, really proud of. There's high school partners that will make bird houses. That's what these boys are doing here. They're making bird houses, and then we have Arbor Day, where those high school students get to go to elementary schools and help kids put together birdhouses. And it's a real win-win. It's a lot of fun. So those are the kinds of things that we do. Next slide. So next slide is just our feedback, and the next slide after that is other things that we've done with urban wood. And from there, I will give it back to Sam. And do you have anything else?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Stephanie. And happy summer to everyone. We hope that we will see you again on September 5th. Until then, have a great summer. Take care.
Thank you.